Your soul doesn't need tools. It just needs you to remember, to listen. Most of us will have memories as a child when we were connected to our soul, to our knowing. And that's why this process of returning home is very much a remembering one. The most tangible way that I could describe it, there was this precious, beautiful jewel that was within me. It was so precious, but like it was encased because they have lived their life based on what the world has told them they should live it, keeping everybody else happy, focusing on everybody else, giving to everybody else. And who did they forget?
Themselves.
Why it's returning and remembering is because we have all the answers we need for us and ourselves in that knowing.
I said that again. I just know. Oh my God. You just know I want to experience more than just what I had.
Why? Down. Why did you want to experience more?
I don't have the word.
What's the feeling?
Excitement. Oh, it's like the answers. Find self, find self. Now I start. Oh.
But my knowing says Bali is a space where you're not going to be distracted. So it's like a cocoon time to be able to bring together everything that you know you to grow that for your next stage, which will be taking it further. You just asked someone who guided you to your knowing, how do you know?
Hi, welcome back to Bold Moves, the podcast where we empower women to be bold, be brave, and be you. I'm Ayu, your host. And today, wow, I just had a mind-blowing conversation with my guest. We talked about going back home in a way that is beautifully explained. Melinda, my guest speaker, she's been helping a lot of people for 30 years and guiding them back to their home, to their true self. And the conversation that we're having is just pure, is just so real. And it was one of the conversations that I will never forget. We talked a lot about the knowing, the jewel that she mentioned, why we're disconnected and how to attune more to your knowing, to yourself. I think I'm not going to say much more. This is one of the conversations that hit me. And she reminds me that the journey is not about fixing. It's not about improving. It's about remembering. And that's what hits me. So let's welcome Melinda Cates. Hello. Thank you so much for taking the time to have this, I think, beautiful conversation we will have with me today. So I really appreciate it.
Are you, now, just I want to clarify, I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Yes, Ayu.
Brilliant. Ayu. I'm an auditory, I'll keep repeating that in my head. I am smiling from ear to ear, if that was possible. I suppose it is, and being able to see you and connect with you again, and
It's amazing.
just your beautiful, honoring, graceful energy, and your professionalism,
That's
and your
beautiful.
thoroughness, and you're just a beautiful person.
It's just amazing that you are. I'm in Bali and you are in New Zealand, and we're just connecting right now, right here, right now. How exciting! So let's start. I just cannot wait for our conversation. But you have 30 years of experience of walking with people on their journey to return to their true self, to their home, guiding them. How great is what you do. And I love that. Just before we get into deep, just as a context for the audience, right?
Yep.
What's coming home mean to you?
Something that is our purpose here on this earth. Something, and it's interesting you asked that because it was something I was processing this morning and wanting to share with people. I kept hearing the question, and it's such a sacred journey. Coming home to you is, and how I got there was, I knew there was something so incredibly precious inside of me. And the most tangible way that I could describe it to myself was like there was this precious, beautiful jewel that was within me. it was so precious, but like it was encased in something that I couldn't touch and I couldn't connect to. And so I knew this person that I was being, the person that had a lot of emotion, who was exceptionally angry at the world. And underneath anger is deep hurt. But for those individuals who are like me, where anger was permissible at home but hurt wasn't, then that's what we expressed. Whereas a lot of people, it's in reverse, where hurt's more acceptable and anger's not.
Yeah.
And I kept feeling this part of me that was driving me, that I knew things and I didn't know exactly what it was, except
just
that
the
it was a
feeling
jewel.
that you knew something.
It was almost beyond a feeling. It was a knowing. And I just knew I needed to find that part of me, because on the outside world, how could I get close or have real relationships with anyone? Because I was very good. I realized now, I kept thinking everybody kept leaving my life, and a lot of people have. But if I'd be absolutely truthful with myself, who was leaving? I was the one leaving. And
That is such an
it's interesting. Was I even there in the Are we even there in relationships?
Are we? That's a big
Because
question.
we're operating from our human self, as I now understand it, which is the emotional, sensory, physical side. But that soul of ours, I came to understand, which is what the jewel is in our true essence, is our soul. I came to connect with and understand that it is the absolute purity of who we are. So it's the wholeness. It's that beautiful energy, being that transcends timelines and lifetimes, that comes into the human body to have a human experience.
Like you mentioned the jewel encased, and what I'm hearing is, when you say it's more than human experience, because human experience is sensory, is physical, is emotion. So it's so much more than what.
Oh yeah. And so coming home to yourself is actually working through. Our soul comes into the body to have a human experience. I mean, the soul in its pure form doesn't speak in language, doesn't have eyes or ears or a physical body. It doesn't have emotions and intellect. It just knows. It's whole. It's pure. Absolutely. And that knowing is not just your soul's voice, it's that connection, that universal consciousness to everything and everyone and every living thing. And so why is it that we're not able to operate as that pure being in a human body? Because that's what we're here for. Because the world around us is being conditioned to squash that part of us.
Yes,
So we
I was
learn that.
about to say. Oh my God, is it because the world, our surrounding is actually disconnecting us from that soul?
Yes.
Is that, oh, it's getting so interesting. I mean, when you put that context, soul, I get it so much more, because now it's clearer about coming home to you. And can you take us, it's just very interesting, because I want to draw back from your experience as well. So can you take us to a moment when you first feel like you didn't belong, you hid yourself, you hid your true self? Was there any moment when you feel that you were disconnected? There must be.
There is. Just quickly to go back to returning home to yourself. It's all that human conditioning, all the emotional pain and hurt from our experiences that cover up that jewel and that soul. So the journey is about unraveling that conditioning, healing the emotion, and bringing the human self back to its pure essence, which is operating fully from all senses, because even that's conditioned. All of them, and all of the other elements that are unique to the humanness, and allowing the soul to express itself in its purity through that process. So that's the journey home, to reunite soul and human again, then unite them to express human and soul potential. So one of the clear memories I have um, of when I knew things.
Mm-hmm.
So most of us will have memories as a child when we were connected to our soul, to our knowing. And that's why this process of returning home is very much a remembering one. Um, and
Oh, I love that.
and I remember we went out to dinner with another family. I would have been 7 years old. And I knew not to talk to the mother of the other family, even though her daughter was friends with mine, other. And so I just didn't talk to her. Well, that night, my father took to me with a horse crop and beat me for disrupting the whole evening. Now, I have no memory of disrupting the evening, but I know it just wasn't right to talk to her. And I remember going to Mum in the morning and she was holding my brother. And she was like, "You disturbed the whole evening, blah, 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 blah." As parents do
Yeah.
when the child doesn't behave.
Disturb the whole, yeah.
And I said to her, "Look what Dad did to me," and showed where he'd beaten me. And I remember her hugging my brother tighter. Now, the adult me understood what Mum and Dad, where they came from, but that 7-year-old, that message that was sent was knowing things equals getting punished, getting beaten, and being the one to blame. And I actually physically remember the experience going on where I felt that knowing and who I was actually being squashed within me. And this fierce, independent Melinda came through saying, "You're on your own now, kiddo. You have to stand on your own 2 feet."
Mm.
And so, but I never squashed my knowing fully. It continued to talk to me right throughout my life in terms of truth. And so I remember even at 5 years old, the first day at school, walking into school and going, "I don't belong here and I don't fit." I was different, but I didn't, because a child doesn't understand it and you've got all those other messages coming at you. You interpret it as a failing or something wrong with you. But I remember going, "I'm not like these other girls or these guys. And I remember feeling really like this incredibly good person, and it didn't fit. And even at 5 years old, it didn't quite fit into that world. And the goodness is the purity of who we are. That's at the core of us. So that's what I was carrying. Yeah, at 5. And then I started seeing people picking everybody for teams, and I'd be the last one to be picked. So I then was getting evidence, see, you don't fit. It's not just my feeling, it's also what others are saying to you. And that went on through pretty much, well, my whole life. But even at school, Mum and Dad sent me to a girls' private school, which was great because when I was at a public school, I didn't do any schoolwork. I fought the boys and I competed with them because that independent fierce Melinda had kicked it.
The fears of Melinda, yeah.
Yeah. And if the teachers weren't up to us and they really weren't, I'd create merry hell because my truth was saying this isn't okay. But there were 2 teachers in my earlier years that and for all of us, there'll be a teacher who got us, a teacher who we connected with, that we flourished in their class because they saw us.
Always, yeah.
I had the joy of having 2 in my earlier years.
But how great is that to have someone that can see us that way?
Exactly.
The others were like, "No, you don't fit in. You don't do that. You pick the last." But then there is one that observant, like, no.
And they don't try to contain you or control you. They see the gift of you and they encourage it to flourish. So imagine if all parents were like that.
Oh my God. I cannot imagine a world like that. I think that would be that should be like that. That should be our world. Am I correct?
And it will be. It will be again, and I truly believe that. That's why I'm committed to what I do, is to help people journey back to who they are, because even the grandparents, because if they can journey back to who they are, then they are going to support the future generations being able to stay connected to their soul and their jewel and not become separated from that.
That's very beautiful. What you do is amazing, guiding people back to their home. That's very interesting. I've never had someone said that to me. Look, what you do, I'm helping people, guiding them back to their true self. And that's why I'm so curious about it. It's just like I mean, I'm in the journey. I really want to know more about myself. And I'm in my 30s. And I remember in my 20s, I didn't know. It's more like confused. It's more like, who am I? What am I? And but there is always a knowing. Now that you mentioned knowing the soul and everything, and I remember my childhood, I kind of know what kind of person I am. And then during the process of growing, the disconnection begins, right?
Yep.
Like, let's get deeper. Let's talk about the disconnection with true self. In your perspective, because we talk about the jewel, you say it's covered by the pain, the trauma. Can we talk more about why people are disconnected to their true self during that beginning of growth?
Initially, they're not. But why do they learn that? Because the people around them are disconnected from their true self. So when like with my knowing, they speak the truth or they reflect back to others what they don't want to see in themselves, they want to control and shut that down. How many children have you come across where they'll say things like, I've got a mole on my chin. And I remember a guy was going out with his daughter who at 5 said, oh, you've got a pimple on your chin. That's how she saw it. And she spoke it. Why shouldn't she? I'm the one that reacted and went, no, I haven't. Because we live with so much fear and judgment. Because
Covering up.
Absolutely. And when you first, even as a child, if you start crying, how many people are so uncomfortable with other people's vulnerability? So what do? They want to shut it down. So how many people have experienced, oh, if you don't stop your crying, I'll really give you something to cry about, or toughen up, or, oh, you're being a sooky girl, and all of those. Exactly. All of those judgments. Whereas when people, if they cry with me, I'm like, celebrate that. Because when you cry, you are loving and honoring you and what you're feeling. And it's your truth. Exactly.
Your truth.
Yeah. And so when you're constantly having consequences, or even if it's not directed at you, you're seeing it in your environment, you learn to adapt to fit in and to be accepted.
You don't
And
behave
you learn
constructed in a way to make us feel disconnected because everyone around us is actually not their true self. So many aha moments already. Oh my God, I've never seen that in that perspective. I was just thinking it's just the world, everyone is negative. And I didn't really think that you said because everyone is masking themselves. And that's why we are taught to do the same. Oh, wow.
And that's where your generation and the younger ones who have a chance to make that difference, sweetheart. You guys are the ones that are the emerging leaders. Oh, even through having this podcast and all of the episodes that you have that share wisdom and insight to help people, because so many people are completely unaware they even have a mask up. I received an email yesterday from a person who shared they'd received one of my emails, didn't know how they'd got it, which I was able to track for them, but it had sparked something in them. They've just retired. Their life has been lived for everybody else. They're financially secure. They have 3 incredibly healthy and successful children. They have healthy and successful grandchildren, but they have no joy.
The joy isn't there because they're covering themselves all of their life. Isn't what you're trying to say?
Because they have lived their life based on what the world has told them they should live it, based on keeping everybody else happy, focusing on everybody else, giving to everybody else. And who did they forget?
Themselves. They forget themselves. Wow.
Because
I have so many faces coming to me right now because you said that. And then, yes, that one. I mean, it's just, and sometimes people really close to you. For example, let's just get deeper into examples. It's just like when you said that, as a mother, as someone, I don't have kids at the moment, Is it okay for moms to do that until they forget themselves? Because everything is for their kids. I do this because of them. So I see a lot of women forget about themselves.
Go a
Is
bit
it
deep.
normal?
Why do they completely focus on their children? It's their value. They
Their
get value from doing that. Because why? Because they have a lack of feeling of value.
lack of feeling of value.
Just about every human being experiences it. And that's why job titles, even online, people spend how much time looking for a title? I'm a such and such coach, or I'm an entrepreneur. I've
Mhm.
never owned the term entrepreneur, and yet I've looked because the title has never been relevant to me. And in fact, I don't even call myself anything now online. So
You don't call you.
I'm rebelling again because
No, it's good. It's
as I
good.
say to people, if you want to know what I do, listen to me, read my words, and come and ask me questions. Come and experience
Your
me.
voice. There is something in your voice that the first time I hear your voice, there is something, I do not know why, but it's soothing. Like when I'm talking to you, I mean, look, we've never met in person. There is a feeling of when I'm talking to you, I do not need to think too much. I do not need to show who I really am. It's just going with the flow. Yes, I have questions, but it's more like I feel that there is something in your voice that is very not just calming. It's more. It's safe. The safety feeling with your voice. And I remember you wrote this though. Let me read it. Where is that? Um, it's about standing in your truth, even when it's been silenced, dismissed, or taken for granted. This isn't about fixing or improving. It's about remembering. It's about returning. That is, I think that's beautiful. I think, can you unpack more for the listeners?
It's interesting. One of the things that the I Make a Difference program, that I created 25 years ago, it has a number of tools in there that for you to apply and to work with. So the tools all came from me because I didn't go to other people's courses and I didn't read other people's books.
Lived experience from you.
Absolutely. But why it's returning and remembering is because we have all the answers we need for us and ourselves in that knowing.
The knowing, we're going back into knowing. That's why it's remembering.
Because it's the voice of your soul, and your soul came in fully aware of everything about you. It holds all the knowledge you need. I mean, you can go further and you can talk about all the codes that you bring back in and all the past lives and future lives and all the others.
Yeah. Let's talk about the disconnection a bit more. How do we know that we are disconnected? That how to help us to be more aware?
How did you know?
I just know.
What else did you feel?
When I feel that disconnection, I had, of course, it's just like, other than I just know, I actually listen more. I remembering what I said in my childhood. I go back to that child me, the stories that I was told, and I was always told that she's the bravest one in the family, but I didn't believe that for so many years. So I always go back to that, the things that I heard from people about me, and then I started to feel it. I combine it with, but I just know, like when I started this podcast, I just know that I am here for more. Is that okay?
And your answer is? What's the feeling in the bottom of your belly? Is that okay?
Yes, I feel like the feeling is like there's like a sparkle in it inside of that.
Because so it feels sparkly. Can you see it?
Yeah, of course. I can see it. I mean, it's, well, when you mention it, it's it doesn't make sense, but I feel the sparkle. I feel the sensation of that moving, the sparkle, like in a cartoon, like a yellow sparkle, and just a little bit in there. Like that's when I'm explaining to you, when I'm talking to you, that's how I feel. And
that's beautiful, and that is the way your knowing is communicating with you to catch your attention. So, because mine initially would be energy, I'd feel the energy and then get the words. Now it's pure words. My partner, Alan, started with energy and visuals. Now he only gets words, because ultimately when you are trusting your knowing, it will only give you words, because it doesn't need to get your attention anymore. So it speaks to you in the way that you process information most effectively. So if you're a visual, you'll get pictures. If you're tactile, you'll get energy and sensations.
Yep.
If you're kinesthetic, you'll feel it in your body. And if you're auditory, you'll hear it.
And this is the conversation that I like, because you give examples, you give us context, and it's just beautiful when you, at the beginning, when you mention about the jewel, the knowing, the self, and it's just makes me feel like I want to know more about mine. Maybe I was connected for some times, but I wanted to know. I mean, yeah, I care about anybody else, but also I want to get in touch more with my knowing in this journey. I don't think the journey is easy for me. It was difficult sometimes. Back 5-7 years ago, I wouldn't know my knowing. I wouldn't speak to my knowing. I don't care about my knowing. And then I moved to Bali. I started to connect more with, I just decided to travel with my husband, and then because we live in Australia, and then when we lived in there, I really don't feel like myself. At the beginning, yes, oh, this is new, this is exciting, I can be another version of me. But at the end, it's more like, it's very dreading. And then we decided to let's start a new one, a place that we've never been and we didn't know much about. So we just jumped in, we sold everything, and then here we are right now. That brings me to this podcast. So last October, I started myself. It was just me talking 7 episodes. But then I want to talk with people who know more things about this personal growth. So I started to have more and more women coming in to talk about their story, the turning point story, why they know when enough is enough, and listening to themselves and talking about self-doubt, talking about insecurity. And I'm more into that. And that's when I said that again, I just know. Oh my God, you just, that is amazing. It's
So, sweetheart, can you see that, it is a journey of returning and remembering, because, and do you know what I love is exactly what you've just done. And clients of mine say, people ask them, what are they doing? And they go, we can't describe it, because what it is I guide people to remember within them. And you've just remembered your connection even more strongly, and it was ready for you. So now it's flowing through.
and it's getting stronger. It's getting stronger. I'm enjoying this session.
So a couple of things. There's a lot that you do know that you just don't remember.
Oh, now you're back to remembering. Yes.
That's where the more you tap into your soul and into your knowing, the more information starts coming forward. And correct me if I'm wrong, you just knew you had to move to Australia, right? You told me, you just said before that you weren't connected to your knowing. You were even then. So correct me if I'm wrong. You were, and you went at 21, if I remember you saying, which astrologically is a brilliant time to do that, because of the Saturn aspect. Because why did you go to Australia? What do you know was the reason you had to go? Trip everything else on the outside and go down deep. What was it that was telling you to go? And why?
I just want to experience at that time. So I know that, oh my God, I used the word again. I know there is so much more that I want to experience in this life other than just staying in my hometown. So I decided to go, even though at that time, the cultural thing, women shouldn't be traveling alone, women shouldn't be this. And that even made me more wanting to go, because people, no, you cannot go. No, you cannot go. Now, the rebellion side of me, I'm going. I just know I want to experience more than just what I had.
Why? Down.
Well, I love this session.
Why did you want to experience more?
I don't have the word, but I have the feeling.
What's the feeling?
It's more like excitement that I'm just going. I just don't have the word.
If you go down to your knowing and ask us, so drop right down to the bottom of your belly, if you can, if you're okay to do that, and feel the groundedness in the bottom of your belly, and allow your whole internal being to just sink down into that area.
I think it's my true self.
So why did you go and ask it, why did I go to Australia, and see and trust the answer it gives you?
That's what it's just when I did that for like 3 seconds. Oh my God, it didn't say, but it's like the answers. Find self. That's what now I start. Oh
And
my
look,
God,
if you hadn't have gone to Australia, you wouldn't have ended up in Bali. You wouldn't have ended up doing the podcast.
No, at that, look, I'm just going to give you the experience. When I looked down,
Yeah.
you said to me, is that okay if you do that? So I looked down. Within 3-4 seconds, I'm not exaggerating.
No, I know you're not. I can hear it.
There's no word. It's just like find self. And I kind of like, maybe I hear it. I don't know. And then that's why I said to you to find.
No, you said true. I think you said true. You said true self to start with. So trust the exact words you get. Find self. That's what it is.
Wow. That is.
Darling, look at the excitement that comes with that.
That's why I said to you at the beginning, I don't have the words. And I said, but I have the feeling of, like, when you're excited, like that kind of feeling. But then you asked me to look down, and I was like, I'm going to try that. And it's just fine. Like, first with the find self. And I was like, that's why I'm excited, because that's the journey, the adventure that I was in Australia. It was very exciting. A lot of things to learn, a lot of things to discover. You can even see it the way I talk right now, right? Can you notice my intonation? It was very exciting. But then as I'm, staying in there, and I started to, because life has their own season. And then right now they send me to Bali for some reasons. And I believe one of the reasons is this. I love doing this. I think you can see it. I think you can see from my intonation, my excitement when the first time I say hi to you.
I don't need any of that.
Beautiful human being. I love it. Thank you so much.
What you are doing by being connected to yourself, which you possibly have not given yourself the credit of how aware you are and how connected you are, is that when you connect with your pure source and your truth and your knowing, the frequency you emit, so mine comes through in my voice, which you shared.
I said to you, yes.
Yeah. Yours comes for me, because it'll possibly be different for each person. There's a true radiance about you, and that has a frequency that is clean. So when I go into people, I see where they're operating from and what's sitting beneath it. And yours is pure and clean. And so that frequency is the power of what you attract to you. And so where you are in Bali, and only you will have the right, not the right answers, but the answer. Mm-hmm. But my knowing says Bali is a space where you're not going to be distracted like you would have been in Australia. Mm-hmm. So it's like a cocoon time for you to be able to bring together everything that you know you want to be doing and to grow that for your next stage, which will be taking it further.
How would you know? How would you know that? Oh my God.
You just asked someone who guided you to your knowing. How do you know?
it's actually what I've been thinking about where I'm at, what the current place that I'm in right now. It's like a cocoon. Like I didn't really say it that way, but that's how I think because I'm preparing myself for my next journey. I do not know right now, but I know that Bali gives me this kind of energy to find again, come back, remembering. See, I'm using the word because it makes sense.
Bali didn't give you the energy.
Yes and no.
Yeah. Down. You keep looking up, my friend.
In a way,
what Bali will have provided is an energy where you were able to connect to a different level of your energy.
yes.
It's different from Bali giving it to you. It was one that was there for you to be in, which then supported you connecting to that. It's what we often do when we say, oh, they gave me that energy, is we're disempowering and not owning our own true process and what we're doing.
No, but what I feel now that I'm looking down, Bali is allowing me to reconnect. Like exactly like you said before. I mean, it's allowing me to know the truth because it's not always butterflies, happy moment. You go to the beach, you do this. No, it's not. It's internal work. It's a lot of debunking all of the feelings that I never had before, new experience. And sometimes it's not always happy moments. Sometimes it's like heavy and dark. Yes, it's how
I know it very well, very well.
I think you know it well. So, I mean, how incredible this session with you today. How incredible you as a human being opening even my eyes to this kind of like conversation, because this conversation you cannot just talk about it to someone else. You can't. And I just appreciate it because you are so different and in a very good way for me to connect with you. So I really appreciate that.
But this, it's your openness, it's your receptivity, and that makes it possible for me to share even more because you are like that. And believe me, if a person, there's always a point where people will either step towards me or step away from me. And I respect whatever their process is.
Sure.
But those that step towards me are the ones that will receive me.
And I'm receiving you with my open.
Absolutely. And I thank you because that is a sign of your trust in you and also your openness to you. Because when we meet people who we have those feelings that you've been describing, and it can be scary for people to meet people who operate from truth and knowing.
When we are disconnected, we do not have our inner voice. It's people's voice, right?
Yeah.
You remember what your mom said, what your auntie said, what your sister said, your uncle said when you're little. It's all their voice, and you are growing up because of their voices. And that knowing is always there. How to get attuned more into that voice.
So if you take a moment and go back to where your hands were and where you were talking about when you were talking about everybody else, where were you pointing and where were you focused?
Like I would like here, because it gets into your brain and you remember what they said more than your voice.
Your breath, or separate I'm not. Please note, this is not a biology lesson. You have your mind. It processes the information through, but in that mind is the intellect, and the intellect absorbs what you learn, what you read, what you hear, what you're told, and and all of that is everybody else's expectations and information. The intellect is excellent for if you are doing accounting or sums or anything that's logical. I would rather have a logical plumber than an emotional plumber. But this stops and disconnects us from our knowing. And if you notice, before you looked up to find the answer, you're looking into your head, not right down at the bottom of your belly, which is where your knowing is. Because if you go and feel, when you get those messages and you just know something, where do they come from?
Is that the gut feeling here?
Yeah, but if you use the term gut feeling, the gut feeling can be two things. It can be a combination of things, but people say, oh, my gut feeling. But what they're not owning is, I know. You can know from up here, but that's an intellectual one. But I know people.
I just know. That's
exactly.
when I just know something. For example, you feel unsafe in somewhere and you just know. Like, I do not feel. Yeah, it's just is that the instinct telling you?
When you're looking at the outside world, so the people around you, the environments you're in, where you're coming from is the solar plexus, so the space at the top of your stomach, just below your rib cage. That is a human process, and it's the sensing. So what we have is like a little radar that is sensing what's going on in our environment. We're picking up the vibes, the energy, the truth and intentions and emotions of other people. Your knowings will be there for you, especially. Like, I knew when I came across your post in Threads, and I went through a number of them, and my knowing said that one. So I don't look for evidence.
Look, that is so interesting because the more is true. Oh my God, I really resonate with that because now that I'm pursuing listening more to myself, more than before, this whole 4 years, I've been attuned to listen to me. That's why I'm starting this podcast last year. I was like, no, I'm doing it. I know there's the calling. It's just, I have it. But then, what I'm thinking is when I am trying to listen more to myself, I become more sensitive of energy is that energy when you hang out with some people, there is something that's saying that, not this one. And you just disassociate with that. I sensed it and I become more aware of what
the energy you're picking up.
Yeah.
And the reason being is if as humans, so take, for example, when I was 7 and I knew not to speak to that other woman, human beings don't understand the knowing. It's like, no, we've got to have evidence on this stuff. Otherwise, it's not real. So the sensing, and is justification to help the human beings accept knowing because you can feel it, so it must be real because you can't just own it. Part of our growth and returning home is to become more aware of the energy of other people. But it's one thing I've always been really conscious of is never calling it negative or positive because that's your judgment of it. Whenever you are looking for an answer, all you need to do is drop your head, take yourself right to the bottom of your belly, and ask yourself the question.
That is the answer that I was looking for. What's one thing we could do so instead of like what I did before, that's why you said looking down, darling. I was like, oh, and then you mentioned it's there. It's But the thing is, do we use this as a filter? Because if you have your knowing and then you go back to your up here, because
make it okay for everybody else. Because to speak your truth from your knowing is too scary. You know, I remember many participants have said, oh, stop looking at me in the eyes. It's like, I'm only looking at you. Oh, no, you see right through to my soul. It's like, I don't need to look into your eyes to see that. Because one of the most beautiful things that I love that I know my soul does so easily is I see the beauty in everyone. And I've worked with pedophiles and murderers, and I've seen the beauty in them. I have not met anyone that is, and I choose not to as well, but I haven't met anyone that has not got the purity of their soul at the core of them. And one of the greatest things that I saw, and please, for your listeners and for you, I don't condone anything that those people have done.
Of course.
But I also completely understand, based on their stories, how they ended up where they did.
Yeah.
And there was one guy who will never be allowed out of prison, and due to the nature of his crime. And we talked about the fact that he had so much pain in him, and what he'd been through was just, you'd never wish it upon a child at all. But we talked about the fact that never ever, potentially, would the victim's parents or family ever forgive him.
Yeah.
And I said to him, but while you are on this earth, if you can find one smidgen of forgiveness for yourself in that, then that's, if you do believe in reincarnation, then that's going to make all the difference for your next life. And the last time I saw him, because he didn't believe that was ever going to be possible, because once he broke through the anger and hurt of what he'd been through, he was able to then connect to the guilt that was sitting underneath, and the grief of what he'd done. And this guy really connected down deep, and he said to me, Melinda, I found the tiniest little bit of forgiveness. And he said, and no matter what, before I die, I want to keep working on that. But in that forgiveness, we shared some processes with him so he could ask for forgiveness from his victim, even though they were not alive anymore.
Yeah. How great is that, what you do? And I think I do not come across to a lot of people that do things like you. And before we wrap up, one last question normally I ask. If someone who's listening feels disconnected from themselves, what's your one big message? If you can have a conversation with them, what would you say?
The voice that's telling them that they're disconnected, what's the voice underneath that telling them? Because for you to feel and recognize you're disconnected means you're fully connected.
Wow.
Otherwise, how would you know you're disconnected?
Actually, you know. That's what you're saying, you know.
Your knowing is nudging you, and you're not quite hearing it yet, but you're feeling the pull and you feel that disconnection. And for you to be aware of that even being there means that your soul and your knowing are getting stronger.
That's the beginning part, right?
Yeah.
You know, you're starting to, there is a pull. Oh my God,
But
Melinda.
the key here is, rather than looking outside, meditation will give you relief for a while, but it's a human tool. Emotional frequency tapping will help you for a period of time. Visualizations will help you for a period of time.
True.
But when it comes to soul, your soul doesn't need tools. It just needs you to remember, to listen, to start taking the steps to allow that connection to strengthen by trusting it and listening to it.
To remember.
Spot on.
Big thing is to remember.
Yeah.
Wow, what a session. Oh, thank you for your time. It's beyond thank you. What is the word, English word beyond thank you?
You are the emerging leaders. One of the emerging leaders that will and is growing your ability to lead with soul by listening to your knowing, by not conforming, by doing what you know is right. And not conforming isn't about rebelling to be a rebel. It's about humanity and the right way things can be done. It's about coming from truth, from integrity, from self-responsibility. It's about coming from acceptance of others and care of others. And all of that is love. And keep shining your light, sweetheart, and keep speaking up and keep trusting your knowing, because it's strong.
Such a beautiful thing to say. I mean, thank you for choosing kindness. I mean, that made my day. It's Monday and that's made my day. And I thank you for that. I thank the universe as well to connect us in a way. And again, thank you so much for your time.
It's a pleasure.